Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Uninterrupted. I'm your host Chris Hammonds, and with me today is our COO John Faust. John, say hello.
Hey everybody.
All right, we're going right after it. What we're going to be talking today is a different type of attack that hackers use called a man-in-the-middle attack. John, can you break down what a man-in-the-middle of attack is without being too technical? What's something if you're talking to a business leader, right?
Yeah, so it's a threat actor getting in the middle of something that you plan on happening. So a financial transaction, many different aspects of those sorts of things, but what it is you are expecting to be interacting with somebody else, and a hacker puts themselves in between that interaction and then causes something bad to happen. So that's maybe you going to a bank website, that's you going to a credit card reader, that's you going to many different things, but a man-in-the-middle attack puts themselves in the middle of an item, an action that's supposed to be happening, and they can either inject code into that, or they can steal data, or can do all kinds of different things with it.
Gotcha. And what are some of the real-world examples that you've seen recently?
Yeah, so Veritasium actually just recently came out with a very good video about this. It's kind of a two-part video about how credit cards and modern credit cards work, but they did the second part one where they put themselves in the middle of a transaction on an iPhone. And so what it does is there's a transit mode on your iPhone that allows you to go and use it at transit terminals like a bus or a train station or subway station without having to unlock the device. Because normally when you go to pay with Apple Pay, you put it on the reader and you have to unlock it and give some approval before it does it. Well, this sits in the middle of that, and you don't have to approve it to do a transit thing. But what happens in this scenario was that they have a reader that then takes that information that's being put on for the transit terminal, it goes to a computer, the computer runs scripting against it, gets itself in the middle of whatever that transaction would be, and then it sends it to another device that then sends it to a credit card reader that says, hey, I'm allowed to make this transaction. In their video, they had a credit card transaction of like $10,000 happen on somebody's iPhone that was sitting on a table locked. And so when you look at that, that was a man in the middle. So the iPhone had information that was taken for the credit card reader that went on with it. The hacker computer injected different code into that to make the iPhone think a different scenario was happening than was actually happening. Then they sent that information over to another phone that was on a credit card reader that then displayed different information that the credit card reader thought was going on in order for this transaction to happen. And that was a classic man-in-the-middle attack where somebody, you thought you were interacting with one thing, or you thought you were just being passively idle. Somebody put themselves in the middle of that data brokerage. They changed the communication method. They made minor changes to the coding that happened in that. They injected some scripting and some coding in the middle, and then all of a sudden some bad thing happened.
You just walk into a terminal, next thing you know, you're out $10,000.
Yeah, and so, you watch the Veritasium video, there's some different things about it that make it kind of a relatively unlikely scenario to happen in the real life, in the real world, like some parameters need to happen from it, but man-in-the-middle attacks happen all the time, and what it really is you think you're interacting with something that you're actually not.
Gotcha. So how do they get in the middle without being detected?
Well, credit card skimmers are a thing for this. Like everybody's heard about the gas station credit card skimmers where they put in a credit card. And they steal that information. That's kind of a passive attack where it's like, hey, I'm collecting this data so I can use it later. There's man-in-the-middle attacks that happen. Like I have a lab environment where I went and cloned a bank website, and you go out to the bank website and you think that you're interacting with a bank website, but you're really interacting with my hacker page that does this. The hacker page then collects your username and password that you type in, sends it onto the bank website for you to log in, but you're really interacting with me stealing that data as a man in the middle of that transaction. I look at other scenarios where Office 365 that'll happen. So a lot of where this business email compromise happens, where somebody says they're sharing a document with you and it looks like a Microsoft page, but sometimes it'll be a non-Microsoft page. It'll be some kind of spoofed Microsoft-looking page or spoofed company page that looks like it's Microsoft. You're interacting with that third-party website to send that data across. That then they may be capturing that in between and then forwarding that along. So they steal your session token, or they do something like that. They steal some sensitive data as it comes through, and it passes you on, so the end user doesn't know anything happened. But the person in the middle, the entity in the middle, the man in the middle has done something to either steal data or modify that transaction so that they didn't have access to things that they shouldn't have access to.
Gotcha. So that's got me thinking. And so it's obviously, public Wi-Fi is going to be a real risk that this could happen this way too.
Well, so that's why. So the reason public Wi-Fi is a risk and everybody tells you not to use public Wi-Fi is because so let's go a little bit about how the internet works. And this is kind of a difficult thing to understand. But the way I explained it is there's something called a DNS server. The DNS, so the way the internet works is the internet works in numbers, right? So it'd be like, 10.25.26. something. And that's like an internal address, right? But that's something. So if you want to say 8.8.8.8 is the Google DNS server, humans don't remember that. So we needed a way to have a directory that would say, hey, what are these names that humans are good at remembering? And can I get them in the numbers that computers need to do it? And that's what a domain name service is. The domain name stores those in a directory and sends that along. What you type into a browser only exists in the IP address state because the domain name server sends it over there and gets you to the location you want to go. If I'm a hacker and I can do DNS poisoning and I can get in the middle of your DNS, then I can redirect that traffic to wherever I want. So as you're typing that in, I can steal that traffic, present my own DNS resolver, send it somewhere else, steal that data in transit and send it along. And so that's what public Wi-Fi can get you in the danger of. And so there's a device, there's many devices like this, but it's called a Wi-Fi pineapple. It's about this big. It sits in a backpack. And the way the Wi-Fi works is it kind of works by who talks the loudest. So if you're at a public network and it has two antennas in it, one, it'll receive the Wi-Fi signal of whatever public network it's supposed to be, and then it'll rebroadcast that out as the same signal. So say you're at Starbucks and it's presenting Starbucks, you can't guarantee that you're connecting to the real Starbucks Wi-Fi or to the Wi-Fi pineapple Wi-Fi. While that's going on, it can then inject code and do DNS poisoning and do all sorts of things like that to put itself in the middle of whatever transaction you think you're doing. So there's ways to mitigate that. There's ways to do certain things like that. When we do a SASE solution at Forbes, where it's like an always-on kind of VPN, the modern kind of VPN technology that's always on, even if you connect to a public Wi-Fi, we're guaranteeing that your DNS server goes through a secure DNS server, so they can't do DNS poisoning. We're not using the DNS of the Wi-Fi that you're connecting to. So there's ways to mitigate that. It encrypts the traffic that's going through, so as it sends it through that public connection, it can't be seen. There's all those types of different things that are going on to help protect against that. But that's what it's doing, is it's a way to mitigate those man-in-the-middle types attack, because I'm now controlling more of the communication method from end to end of those sorts of things. Now, I'll talk about this really quickly. Those private VPNs that you can buy, like you've seen them advertised all over the place. There's a billion of them out there. You got to be careful with those, because you're just swapping your identity provider from one ISP to another, right? And so a lot of times if you're free, then you're the product. And so some of those can look and see where you're going to and sell those for advertising and do all those sorts of things. And that's why we talk about doing a SASE solution or one of those VPN type solutions that you control as your organization controls to kind of protect you a little bit more from those sorts of things. But really what they're meant to do is to prevent somebody from snooping that information as it goes through to try to prevent those man-in-the-middle attacks.
Gotcha. So what are some signs that you might be able to look for, identify that someone's actually in the middle of one of those types of attacks?
Yeah, so check the URLs of the websites that you're going to. Make sure they're actually going to the place that you think they're going to. Look for certificate errors that pop up. Like if you go to a website that you think is secure and it gives you some kind of like certificate warning up in the upper corner, or the bar turns red, like that could be a sign. You know, guys, like think about where you are before you're doing certain actions, right? So if you're on a public network, maybe don't go to your bank account if you don't need to, right? Like, you know, or go to it in some method that you know is good, like maybe the cell signal on the data plan on your iPhone or Android instead of through the public Wi-Fi. You know, there's common sense ways to kind of take care of that sort of thing, and just think about where you are before you do certain actions, and just like have a little bit of stuff. Have a SASE solution if you're a business that can really protect your devices where they are. It has a corporate firewall that kind of roams around with your device everywhere and kind of protects you from these sorts of things. And there's one thing about a man-in-the-middle attack that I'll jump on here really quickly that maybe people don't think about, is it actually, what I talk about all the time about how tools, it just depends on the intent of who's behind them. Cyber security companies used to use man-in-the-middle attacks all the time in order to help people from a security perspective. So before everything was HTTPS encrypted on the internet, so that little S on HTTPS means it's an SSL encryption. Before that happened, we used to inspect all the traffic that came through at the firewall level to see if something bad was trying to come through when a user went out to the internet. Well, after they encrypted that, we can no longer see that anymore. So then we did, for a while there, we were doing what's called a man-in-the-middle attack, which it was the same idea.
Right.
We would look and decrypt that traffic, inspect it, and then repackage it up with a cert that was on the firewall and send that along. We'd actually open it up and say, hey, is there anthrax in here, before we'd close the envelope back up and say, no, it's good. Well, that started breaking other things, and so we don't do that anymore. So we moved the detection layer to the endpoint, which means the firewalls are less effective than they used to be, because they can't inspect that traffic the same way they could before, because they can't physically open up those encrypted packets and close them back up and look for them. So we can't do the man-in-the-middle attack anymore. We can't use it for good.
Right.
We can't use that type of thing for good behavior. And so now we move the security layer one layer back from the gateway side. We're now moving it down to the endpoint side. So sometimes we have to let things get through to the endpoint before we can actually detect that something's bad there. And so there's pros and cons. Sometimes you move a lever and another lever moves. You turn a wheel and another wheel turns, right?
Right.
And so sometimes in cybersecurity, you're chasing different things in order to stop certain attacks, then you now allowing something else to come through, and you need to have a compensating control for those sorts of things.
Gotcha. And to John's point, one of the things he mentioned as well is checking the website. Just looking at basic stuff like that. If you're going to, let's say you're going to look up an attorney and they have law in their URL, make sure it's not LAVV. You want to look very closely to URLs and things when you're visiting websites.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add about a man-in-the-middle attack, John?
I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. I mean, there's going to be some of it that's going to be hard to catch. They're getting better at it. AI is making it a little bit easier for them to obfuscate this sort of thing. They're making websites that look better. They're cloning websites that look better. They're getting better at spelling and grammar and all those kinds of things that happens. And so it's really just thinking, do you need to be on this network? What are your security protocols that you have in place? Do you have some kind of SASE solution that's helping protect you wherever you are? And then just be cognizant. And if something feels weird, it doesn't feel right, then pull the emergency brake and stop.
Absolutely.
And take a second and breathe and say, hey, this doesn't feel right. Maybe I shouldn't do this on this network, and I'll do it on another one.
Well said. All right, guys, that's all the time we have today. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Uninterrupted, a podcast from Forbes Cybersecurity. We hope you walked away with practical insights to protect your business and stay ahead of the latest cyber threats. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. For more tips, resources, and cybersecurity updates, visit Forbes.com, that's 4bis.com, and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. We'll be back soon with another episode, so stay vigilant and stay uninterrupted.